Aloha, everyone. My name is Megan Lamson, and thank you so much for this opportunity to talk story with you all, and hopefully you can hear me well, and we've gotten through with all of our technological glitches for the evening. But I'm a marine biologist with Hawaiʻi Wildlife Fund. Also here with me tonight is Hawaiʻi Wildlife Fund intern and tropical conservation biology and environmental scientist Mike Stone. So he'll be with us for part of this presentation. And I was asked to give this presentation by Susie for the Pahoa Rotary Club in preparation for our joint cleanup effort with the South Hilo Rotary Club at Camilo on the 24th of August. So throughout this talk, if you have any questions, maybe just shoot a line into the chat. We can touch base and talk story more at the end. And quick outline, kind of breeze through a lot of different topics, a little bit about our nonprofit, global statistics and trends of marine debris, our own recovery efforts, mostly focused on Hawaiʻi Island, but we do also operate on Maui and have hosted community cleanups and collaborative efforts in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Why we consider marine debris almost to be the same thing as plastic pollution, what we can each do as individuals or Rotary clubs or schools or island communities to help prevent future marine debris, education of our youth, research efforts, policy efforts, what we could all do at the grocery store, and art and advocacy. So stay tuned. A little bit about us, Hawaiʻi Wildlife Fund. We are a very small nonprofit. We were founded in 1996 by Hannah Bernard and Bill Gilmartin. They're on your bottom left. And we are a group of educators and biologists, cultural practitioners, wildlife managers, artists. We're all committed to protecting Hawaii's native wildlife. So this is a group of mostly our Hawaiʻi Island team. And here are our newest 3 members, Bev, Mike, and Jody. Really excited about that. And all of the volunteer base.
Slides are, it's still on the first slide. I don't think you did it on presentation. Yeah.
All right. It's still on the first slide? Thanks, Mike. All right. Let me see how to do that. Let me try stopping share. All right, you see that second slide?
We see the presentation outline right now.
Woo, woo. Okay, right on. Well, that's exactly where I am. So carry on. Thank you for the interruption. That was important. I would have just been talking to you and you wouldn't have seen the different pictures. So here was our slide just about our small nonprofit. We turned 25 years old on March 28th. So we just hit that milestone, and we are what we call a small but mighty group of individuals committed to protecting native wildlife. So those are our newest 3 members that I mentioned, Ev and Mike and Jody on Hawaiʻi Island, and hopefully each and every one of you will be able to join us in the future for some sort of restoration, advocacy, education effort. With that, I do want to kind of step back and introduce a little of some of the other projects that we work on besides marine debris and plastic pollution. Those are inclusive of protected species efforts, monitoring and protection, things like the Hawaiian monk seal and hawksbill sea turtle. Recovery effort, we also do a lot of youth environmental education. I'll kind of breeze through that later. Inky-line pool restoration, wetland work days, along with marine debris and drive forest coastal strand work. So I will be focused primarily on marine debris efforts today, but if you have questions or interest about any of the other stuff we do, I encourage everyone to check out our website at wildhawaii.org, and Mike can maybe throw that in the chat. But keep in touch with us. We'd love to get you involved and learn more how we could work together and protect our native wildlife and habitat. So a bigger step back too, I just want to mention that marine debris is one of many, many stressors that our coral reefs are facing right now. And so I want to just put that in context. There are lots of things that we are doing, unfortunately, to degrade our one planet Earth. And so based on the fact that a lot of those things are anthropogenic and driven by humans. Hopefully that inspires us to make some changes at the local and global levels to better protect these ecosystems. So it's not just marine debris, but that's what we're focused on. And living in the middle of the North Pacific, in the beloved Hawaii, we realize just how intimately we are all connected and how we are surrounded by ocean and we are connected by it. Oceans are responsible for the air that we breathe, and here in Hawaii for providing a lot of our subsistence protein sources, as well as shipping containers coming in and delivering things that we need that we cannot find here. And so just good reminders of where we're located and how that impacts what is washing up along our shorelines. So here's kind of just an overview of the Hawaiian archipelago in general, and scrolling back out, you can see that we're in the middle of the North Pacific subtropical high, and that is also known as a garbage patch or a rubbish patch, and there's multiple convergence zones within the North Pacific, and there's multiple gyres throughout the world's oceans that are actually collection basins for things that are floating and don't have a lot of mobility. So whether that is plankton, something that's biological, or something that is floating and is not biological, something that is man-made and created by humans, like marine debris, it ends up in these convergence zones. And then just kind of based on our proximity to the North Pacific subtropical high, the Hawaiian archipelago acts like a sieve, and it captures a lot of the debris that's washing ashore. So in the main Hawaiian Islands, that means oftentimes it's things based on, it's the northeast corners that are kind of the hot spots or collection zones, just based on our prevailing trade winds as well as the current. On Hawaiʻi Island, it is and has been historically the southeast corner. What is marine debris? Backing up even more, marine debris is defined by NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as any man-made object that finds its way into an ocean or waterway. And so this can be everything from lumber to metal cylinders, microplastics, tires, you name it. We've seen it in the ocean or somewhere, and it's not just plastic. However, the vast majority of it is. And so we'll talk about it later, both the types and then the size and the scope and the scale. That marine debris is a clear problem, not only for our native wildlife, but also potentially for human health. Some examples of what we find, things are big and small, from these little army men with aquatic hitchhikers growing on them as they washed ashore. But here's a shot of Kamilo Paikanaka kind of facing out towards Kamilo Point. And when we see a beach looking like this, it's hard to say where some of this stuff is coming from. Sometimes it's clearly marked and we can tell it's coming from, if it's dishwashing detergent that's coming from China. Other times we know that it's local in origin, like this plate and bumper that washed up with valid registration for several more months. Sometimes it's not marked and it's large and we know it's related, it's a boat hull, but we have no idea what its use is or where it came from. And then on occasions, we'll even find treasures and things that we're willing to take home. So regardless, marine debris is a global problem. It's a problem for wildlife. And so now it's our kuleana living here in Hawaii to help be a part of the solution. So it is a global problem. A lot of this debris is not coming from Hawaii. However, it's now our responsibility to do what we can to remove this debris in order to protect our island residents and native wildlife and turn off the tap. So Mike and I don't have to be collecting marine debris into our retirement. So it's just some stats, and hopefully this talk won't be too data heavy. I am a numbers person, so bear with me. But on average, we're generating many tons of plastic pollution annually. Estimates of about at least 5 million metric tons entering the ocean annually. And that's an old stat. That was from 2010. And so now 11 years later, it just scales larger. So if you're looking at the graph on the bottom, that's showing cumulative plastic pollution. And so I'm not sure if you can read the axes, but that top one says 5 billion tons. And we hit that and exceeded that amount in 2015. So to put that in perspective, we've now created more plastic in the billions of tons, more billions of tons of plastic than we have life on Earth, humans on Earth. And so that's just really frightening, a really frightening fact. And so with that, I am giving you an optional homework assignment, take it or leave it. And Mike is going to throw the YouTube link in the chat, but I highly recommend this 6-minute video that National Geographic put out. We share it in our classroom presentations, and it's great for keiki and kupuna alike. It talks about plastics, why we are where we are, when this started, and maybe give some suggestions on how we can pull ourselves away from this plastic addiction. Another study recently by Schmidt et al. In 2017, excuse me, used modeling to extrapolate out and find that 10 catchments, the majority of which were in Asia, were producing about 90% of the plastics in the world's oceans. And so, yes, a lot of the plastic in our oceans is actually coming from the land. And so when you think of marine debris and you're using terms like ocean debris or ocean plastics, it's not necessarily synonymous. And so we can't detach ourselves and we can't just blame the fishing industry or the shipping industry, because really all of us are contributing to this problem. Even some of the debris is coming from river basins in Asia. Back until a couple years ago when we were recycling our plastics on this island, for example, after things were sorted and parceled out and sold to the highest bidder in Oregon, they would end up going back across the Pacific, China, and who knows, maybe being lost in these rivers and washing back up and littering our shorelines here in Hawaii. So we are all accountable, and we can't point the fingers out until we start pointing it in and take responsibility for each and every one of our own individual decisions. So with that, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, Naomi, but plastics come in many different shapes and sizes, but they also come in different types. And so there are the quote unquote 7 polymer types that are classified for the recycling system, 7 being the great big giant other category. What this means is that not all plastics are the same. So in addition to these 7, there's dozens of them because they're mixing different types, polypropylene with polyethylene and bottles, etc., cellulose acetate. And so depending on the type of plastic, it's going to interact differently in the different environments. So whether that's salt water or fresh water, whether that's a seafloor, etc. So we shipped a bunch of our plastics, the randomized sample from Camilo Point, to the Center for Marine Debris Research out of Hawaii Pacific University, along with many other plastic researchers and cleanup coordinators around the state. And Kayla Brignett and colleagues were able to find out that really things were compartmentalized based on the plastic type. So this map, which is awesome, this kind of figurine, hard for me to wrap my head around it because we live on Hawaiʻi Island, so I flipped it around. Apologies for the numbers being transposed. Think of it this way. So on the Kona leeward sides of the island, we're getting more of the land-based sources of pollution, things that will potentially sink, sometimes float, and are less apt to scatter out to shore. So things like cigarette butts, polystyrene, expanded polystyrene, or foam containers. Whereas on the Hilo side, we're getting a little bit of more of the hard rigid plastics, the 5s and the 2s. At Camilo, we're seeing more of the sea surface stuff. So the stuff on the far right end, polyethylene, polypropylene. Why does it matter? It matters because different plastics have the different ability to both, well, some of them will float, some of them will sink, they'll accumulate in different places. And certain plastics also have additives in them that are more or less detrimental for humans and wildlife. So probably TMI, but there you go. And why do we care about it? Is Hawaiʻi Wildlife Fund a garbage picker-upper? Are we hope to be picking up trash forever? No, we don't. This is really something that we've gotten involved with because, like I mentioned earlier, it's one of many threats to our marine wildlife, and we want to do whatever we can to reduce these threats. So pull the plastics off the beach and pull it above the higher high tide level. And so it doesn't risk refloating and endangering wildlife, whether that be through entanglement, like these top photos, ingestion, like the bottom left one, smothering, physical breaking of corals, smothering it so they are not exposed to sunlight, transporting new novel invasive species or viruses here to our coral reefs. All of the above, they're threats. Not to mention the additives I talked about that are present in most all of plastics are also then potentially leaching out. Things that have absorbed onto plastics could then absorb into the organs of the critters that eat them. And so who are the critters that ultimately eat fish? And it's something to think about, because the things that harm other animals are apt to harm human animals. So this is how it all got started on Hawaiʻi Island. The Hilo Point was actually the first recorded documented site of a Hawaiian monk seal pup. And that was back in 2001. And so our co-founder ended up there for weekend after weekend, 6 to 8 weeks during when the pup was being weaned. And this was not the mama pup. But monk seals in general have some sort of affinity to nets in the ocean. They're using them to their advantage because these are floating fish killing devices. And so they've become pros at harvesting the fish, whether these nets are attached to fishermen or not, or they're derelict and floating. And for whatever reason, they always seem to haul out right next to one of them. And so that was the story of how we started on Hawaiʻi Island in 2001. And it's also worth mentioning that plastics are intimately connected to climate change. The harvesting of oil from deep down in the bottom, in the earth, fighting wars for oil, the transport of oil, turning it into plastic, molding it into things, and then transporting it across the world, not to mention the disposal costs and the added burden and greenhouse gas emissions that are produced when we're trying to dispose it, whether that means landfilling, throwing it out in the environment, recycling, or incineration. It's all got greenhouse gas emissions along the way. So it's definitely something that we're going to have to curb if we care about climate change and changing that crisis. So with that, what are we doing about it? That's a lot of doom and gloom. So collectively for the past 23 to 25 years, we've removed over 350 tons of marine debris from the whole archipelago. On Hawaiʻi Island, that is nearly 300 tons. And then the combination of Maui, Midway, and the French frigate shoals are cleanups in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands with other collaborators in the 90s that added an extra 51 tons or so. But the bulk of our efforts and our best tool ever are our volunteers. And so these are volunteers who are helping us both advocate for single-use plastics reduction bills, volunteers who are inspired to seek alternatives in their everyday life, and volunteers who are used to pull hundreds of pounds on average per cleanup from our beaches. So we mahalo each and every one of the participants who've helped us over the years, school groups, community members, and visitors alike. And we really couldn't have done this without them. So some photos from the early years. That was the northwestern Hawaiian Islands in the top left corner. And here, just put things in perspective, yes, I'm talking mostly about Kaʻū. However, we have hosted cleanups around Hawaiʻi Island, and Kaʻū is just one of the areas that accumulates more and is also overlapping with regions that are more ecologically and culturally sensitive, and we want to make sure that we are removing the plastic, and so these coastal sites are still there and good habitat for our wildlife. So with that, here is a photo from the early days, 2005, what Camilo looked like, and some more recent events and cleanup groups that we brought down there. On average, we found after 10 years of data that about 81 pounds are removed per person at each cleanup event. So Naomi, you were asking for us to brainstorm dirty beaches on the Kona side. And it would be really hard to find 81 pounds of debris for each person in Kona unless you were there working to pick up some sort of derelict encampment or something. So like I said earlier, we're almost to 300 tons collected to date on Hawaiʻi Island since 2003. So we are a little bit more than 800 pounds away, and we're hoping we're going to get it this weekend. Other efforts include biweekly net recovery patrols, or we go out to these kind of targeted areas that we know are high accumulation zones, and we grab these nets that are particularly good at entangling our wildlife. We've beat up and destroyed many a beach cleanup rig over the years, but we have a sophisticated dump bed system with a winch mounted on the top and a logging hook. This is our new truck. We just recently, thankfully to a generous donation from a local foundation, we were able to purchase this, and that winch on top is used to haul those nets into the truck, and then we dump it into a storage pile at the Waiahinu transfer station, where the county of Hawaii so graciously lets us store nets there until we are able to find a better use for them. So right now, a better use is diverting it from landfill and participating in the NOAA Nets to Energy partnership, so they go to Covanta. However, we've been in the dialogues and conversations with many other upcyclers and recyclers, and we're looking for a solution that would have less of a greenhouse gas footprint attached to it. But we do have a lot of nets now, so if you have any ideas, send it my way. And then the small stuff. So a couple years ago, we partnered with 12 mechanical engineering students from Sherbrooke University in Quebec, and they helped design a prototype and actually build out the prototype that they gifted us. And it was shipped to Hawaiʻi Island thanks to the donations from a crowdfunding campaign. We were able to get it more off-road ready and bring it to the beach, where we found that it was over 95% effective at removing microplastics down to the 0.4 micron, so things that are smaller than a human hair. And what does that look like? So we've also conducted research. What do our efforts look like over the years? And so, like I said, I'm a data person, so here's our data. If you're looking at the columns, it's by project year. We didn't start organizing by calendar year until recently, but you can see there's kind of been a consistently high trend. We were pulling more derelict fishing nets at the beginning, and on average it's about 50% by weight, these derelict fishing nets and lines. So that is the blue part of the column, and the non-net miscellaneous plastic debris are in orange. And folks ask us from time to time, did you ever see anything from the tsunami? And yes, absolutely, we saw a little bit, but we were getting stuff from Japan and China and Korea and Taiwan and California, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, you name it, Soviet Union, we've seen it, and stuff washes up. And we didn't notice a huge pulse until potentially 2017 that may or may not have been attributed to Japanese tsunami event and tragedy 10 years ago. But how does that look like today? You know, our numbers are similar. If we're extrapolating out from this first quarter, we're probably going to get something like 27,000, 28,000 pounds again this year. And if you break it down by year and you remove that first outlier year, the first ever cleanup at Camilo that we hosted over 2 days and removed 50 tons or 100,000 pounds, then you see kind of a trend at an average of approximately 15 tons removed per year by volunteers. If you look at this, you might say, oh, well, maybe there is that pulse of the tsunami debris in the later years. But really, it's not necessarily reflective of accumulation, because we find that when we host more cleanups, we pull more trash. And so in addition to those the columns at the bottom with the axes of the year, I added a line for cleanups. And so really, we've been cleaning average 40 times a year. But if you look early on, it was quarterly or every other month, maybe monthly. And we've really kind of upped our ante in recent years. And so when we've hosted more cleanups, we've pulled more debris. And a common sense. And here again, I showed you the map of where we've hosted cleanups. Well, this is a map of our impact. And so our density of debris removed around the island at these various sites, thanks to another Hawaiʻi Wildlife Fund intern made this map for us a couple years ago. And I'm not sure if this is reflected or not here, but 95% of our nearly 300 tons removed to date on island have come from the remote Kaʻū district, followed by North and South Kona, Hilo, as well as Kohala. So we're going where we it's needed the most and that where it is accumulating the most on island. So if you can't make it to our Camilo cleanups, you can kind of look at some of these other sites where you might be able to find some marine debris. I'll share this map with you later. And we're also collecting debris of composition. And so NOAA encouraged partners to create these standardized marine debris surveys where we go to the same area at Camilo, kind of a cleaner stretch of beach. And so we measure everything within 100-meter swaths, just a little over 300 feet by approximately 10 meters, depending on the tide. It's the same area around every month. We're going an average of 10 times a year. And we've been doing this since September 2016. As of our survey last month, our average was 2,300 pieces of marine debris found along this beach swath monthly. So it's kind of declined, I'll show you that, but 94.4% of the marine debris we were collecting was plastic, followed by glass. And so this is why we are confident in calling marine debris plastic pollution, at least on the remote Kaʻū beaches that we are known to clean. So here's what the survey looks like during a particularly dirty time. This was probably from the summer of 2018 or 2019 when we had a big pulse. And that's after a survey cleanup. And so as you see here, there's still some net remaining. That's because someone who, let's say, didn't know better decided to light it on fire, which is really noxious and really super toxic and not recommended as a way to dispose marine debris. So that was harder to get, and we need to glove up and break that into pieces to remove it on a future month. So here again, mostly plastic. Those were stats from last year when revised with our most recent year, about 95% plastic, followed by glass. Unclassified are those plastiglomerates, these rocks that are kind of formed like rocks, plastic mixes because people are burning trash on the beach. Again, really not recommended. Here you can see, since we started these surveys in September 2016, we've had pulses in the fall. So things tend to spike between the second and third quarter, and they taper off in the winter. In the winter, we're more apt to get some of these large derelict fishing nets wash in. The two pulses that we saw were the late summer of 2016 and then 2017. And then things have tapered off. Fortunately, and through COVID, the beaches have remained fairly clean. And so that's what we want us to see. Everybody turning off the tap and the stuff not washing in. Another pilot study that we started in 2018 was about brands. And so this is one of Mike's graduate projects. He's kind of taken this and run with it. The idea being that there are different ways that we can tackle the plastic pollution problem at the source. And some of that is to contact these manufacturers, encourage them to seek different alternatives. And so Nestle in this year for our survey was definitely the #1 brands. Nestle and Nescafe were high up on that list, followed by Oral-B. And hopefully soon, Mike will be presenting a more robust survey that includes our 2021 data. So moving forward, and I'll try to speed through some of this stuff because I realize we're coming to 7 o'clock here, but we are big proponents of advocacy for wildlife and for places that can't speak up for themselves and teamwork. And so part of that is just being involved with the greater Hawaii Marine Debris Action Plan, HUI, groups of government agencies, nonprofit, for-profit, collaborators who are coming together with the goal to reduce and remove and to research and to prevent marine debris. So happy to share more information about that. We're honored to be a part of that. We've worked with many, many different partners over the years. This list is not comprehensive, and I hope to add the Rotary stamp logo on there here very soon. But encourage you, whether you are able to participate in a cleanup, host your own do-it-yourself cleanup in your area, please kind of be mindful of these different bills that are moving forward at locals and state levels that can potentially help prevent and reduce the amount of locally created marine debris. So there are things that you can do here locally. Inspired by the State Senate Bill 522, we have moved forward, and little by little, county by county, we are trying to move forward with single-use and disposable plastic phase-out bills. And we're hoping to introduce something, that our county council will introduce something soon. So please reach out to your legislators about that. Our debris hierarchy, like I said earlier, we do not want to burn things on the beach. That would be the best, or the worst option. We are always looking for new options for reuse, recycling, art, research. So if you have any creative ideas, please reach out. Here are some of the options that we have used, looked into, and researched, and hope to move forward with potentially. And also a big component of our efforts are spent on youth education around the island, and now because of virtual platforms statewide. And so thanks to a NOAA prevention grant, we were able to create a marine debris keiki education and outreach curriculum geared towards marine debris prevention for our local school children, K through 5. And so we're out in the classrooms, and then if and when ever possible, bringing them to their own local dirty beach and working with them to think of local, creative, innovative solutions to this global problem, local solutions. So we have worked with Girl Scout troops, we have worked with school groups, we have created huge murals and mosaics, like this Honu perspective mosaic. It doesn't look that big, but it's quite tall. It's taller than me. We've diverted some of our plastics to renowned artists like Plam Longobardi and our local free divas and artists, Kat Crable with Nerdle in the Rough and Maddie Mae Larson with Upcycle Hawaii. And so I encourage you to look into these and seek alternatives. We have contributed many, many tons to a traveling whale that was made out of plastics, marine debris from Hawaiʻi Island and Kauai, which I believe now is in Shanghai. It was installed first in Belgium. And with that, I just kind of want to say, you know, I hope this wasn't overwhelming. It is a global problem, but I never let the overwhelm take us, lead us to inaction. Let's not be so overwhelmed that we do nothing. And so Rotary is a service-based group. You are action-oriented humans. I commend you. I'm excited to collaborate more. We all are. You know, this is a before and after from a beach cleanup a couple years back in the summer. This is what it looked like in the mid-1980s. So because of the dedication of one human, we started our efforts, Bill Gilmartin, we started our efforts in Kaʻū and have since then removed nearly 300 tons. And so the solution is not beach cleanups. The solution is stopping this pollution from the source. And so working together, getting involved, telling your friends about this. People don't need to fly to Hawaii to save us from our plastic pollution. They need to clean up their own local beaches or campuses or favorite park or whatever they can. But if you do live on islands, you are welcome and encouraged to join us. And so here are some upcoming dates, and or host your own, adopt a beach. We'd love to help you provide supplies if needed. So with that, just a reminder, we're all connected. Oceans connect us. And I hope that you took something from today. And in addition to that Nat Geo video, I'd like to pose this question to each of you, and you don't have to answer. But based on this information and potentially the cleanup we'll be doing together in a couple weeks here, how do you think you can best protect our oceans? How can you use your voice or your sweat equity or your dollars or your creativity to help us get out of this human-made problem? So with that, I thank you for your time. I am here for questions. We can look at the chat. And mahalo nui. I really appreciate this opportunity. So thanks so much.